We believe centrally that the experience of expressive art, creative art, is a healing, well being supporting activity. And we believe that human relationship is also such.
Welcome to Talking About Kids. I am your host, R. Bradley Snyder, researcher, activist, and author of The 5 Simple Truths of Raising Kids. Matt Sandoval is in the business of transforming kids' trauma. To accomplish this, he and Free Arts, the organization he leads, employ a simple formula. Art plus mentors equals resilience. Matt and I discuss how this equation works, as well as his tips for using art to build resilience in your home, in your classroom, or in your program. Talking About Kids is sponsored in part by the Arizona Department of Health Services Must Stop Bullying campaign through its Title V Maternal and Child Health Program. For more information, go to muststopbullying.org. If you think art programming might help kids overcome trauma, please like this episode and then share the Talking About Kids podcast with your friends and colleagues. And now, the interview.
I've been professionally involved with children, youth, and families at a programmatic level for 20 years at this point. And first, there were exposures to things in like camps, day camps, resident camps, seeing creativity. To be honest, part of my own personal bias and work is knowing that growing up, I didn't really have a lot of experiences that were positive around the arts. And it grew on me later to see the impact of others. So it's not like I had a judgmental stance on the arts. I didn't experience it, nor did I consider myself to be an artist. And that is part of my ongoing story, because we regularly say that everyone is welcome here to participate at their level of comfort. And I'm an example of that, where I didn't come out. I'm not somebody who has an MFA in that type of field. Human service, definitely. And a pretty significant moment in my career was developing with a team of others, including partner agencies, a program called Los Artes in Glendale and West Phoenix, which was mimicking something that had been done in Tucson. And essentially, this was a educational program for young adults who needed to complete a GED, where they spent half of their time every day in the program in the GED preparation classroom, but also in a tile mosaic art studio. So why do these things go together? And what I learned by helping lead and then successfully branching that into another location, it was publicly funded. That program stopped operating about 11 years ago, 12 years ago now. But it made an impression upon me about how different the population reacted to yet another alternative education program. So not to get too much into the details of the hardships that our clientele were experiencing, but these were young people, young adults, some who had stopped attending school as fifth graders, ninth graders, and were now 18, 19, trying to figure out how best to get a GED to achieve some kind of workplace goals. And they had been through every alternative program, all the ones that have credit recovery, computer-based. And so this was kind of like a last option, and it had a lot of success. I mean, we were seeing hundreds of people participate in this. And what was the difference was a often stressed, sometimes overworked client base that might be full of a lot of educational self-judgment about their achievement felt something differently in the presence of this space, because art is an interesting way to engage. It is a way to work with our defenses when, if you've got a pattern of like academic challenge, enrolling in another school program is not that exciting. But this one here, where there's art and education, And so that made a huge impression upon me. And interestingly enough, after I went further, worked with other populations, got a master's of social work to build more skills in my own professionalism around mental health, I applied to free arts. That's how I got here, rather than having relationships. But then it turned out I really did without knowing it, because some of the artists involved in those projects were also involved at free arts. I just didn't know that at the time, which once I mentioned this story in interviewing, they did their homework, they connected and realized, oh, he does have experience around this, understanding how it plays a crucial role in building engagement and safety for a population where that has not been successfully experienced or achieved.
So, I mean, obviously, a lot of my listeners are in Arizona, but some aren't. And free arts is a big part of the fabric specifically in Maricopa County, but all throughout Arizona over the years. But for those who are unfamiliar with free arts, tell me a little bit about its mission and the services it provides.
Yeah, we as a vision and mission want to create access for children who've experienced trauma. Often that means parental separation or separation from a safe home. So our constituencies are those in child welfare, who are in foster care, kinship care, who live in shelters either by experiencing homelessness or domestic violence recently, or live in a treatment center. So very narrow lane.
Right.
Which is great for your listeners, is what we do with ours works with whoever you're working for,
right,
with, for or with. And so often some of our learning opportunities are opportunities for anyone, regardless of the venue, to know that these are skills, these are program elements that touch on the human experience. So they work with everyone, but they are absolutely powerful at some core things that help people feel safe. And when we think about who we're serving, that safety question of being physically, emotionally safe, having consistent interactions with caring adults is not a certainty. It's been something that has been challenged maybe throughout their life or acutely in a very significant way. And so that causes us to adopt some programs where we have everything from like a one-day art experience, aptly named a free arts day, which is kind of an introduction, to sustained weekly programming that anyone can lead and facilitate, called weekly mentor program. Those can be often very long, and they're designed to be open entry, open exit, because sometimes our client base is moving in and out of a shelter environment or in and out of a foster care group home. And then we have some very significant and powerful programs like our day camps that happen mostly in the summer, but a little bit more recently during school breaks. And these are 6 hours plus per day for 5 days. One particular camp model has everyone meeting for 10 days. And that is where our amount of contact is the highest in and around the environment, and the outcomes tell the story. It is powerful for helping people understand a view of self, develop regulation skills, develop a sense of efficacy. I can do something hard. I can make a plan. I can work through a challenging project. I can make a connection with a peer. I can trust a safe adult, a trained, vetted free arts adult mentor. And so our model is about offering these trauma-informed art activities to this population, knowing that adversity and trauma is absolutely part of everyone's story and acutely of the audience that we're serving. But we bring really two important, powerful things. We believe centrally that the experience of expressive art, creative art, is a healing, well-being supporting activity. And we believe that human relationship is also such. And the ironies are, it's very hard to realize in your life where you've been hurt and not realize it's part of a dysfunctional or a challenged relationship. So our recipe, our formula, if you will, art plus mentors equals resilience, is that creative experience plus human relationship that is there, caring and supportive. And we believe that helps build a base for people to cope with reality, to build a sense of self, to communicate that externally, and then also build a sense that I can do a challenging, hard thing that's important to me. And we hope more than anything, that's what ports out of their experience at Free Arts into whatever they want to do next, whether that's academic, whether it's vocational or the personal and important, like talk to your crush when you're super
Mm.
nervous. Those are hard things to do that are important to you, and that's what our model is all about.
So, Matt, I'm listening, and as you're talking, I'm hearing your definition of resilience, and I know that longtime listeners have heard about trauma and resilience a lot on this program, and I've heard you mention some of those building blocks, like efficacy that you get from an art project, like the opportunity to form a relationship in an environment that is um, kind of less restrained or less constrained by judgment as they might be in a different academic setting. But tell me more about how you and free arts define resilience. What are you looking to give to these kids in addition to kind of what I just mentioned there?
Yeah, I think resilience is definitely a buzzword, and in some ways, it can mean a lot of different things to people.
Yeah.
But what we are thinking about when we talk about resilience is not placing a burden on someone that they should just completely ignore their past. We're
Mm.
not interested in believing that the story you bring to free arts is the only story that you should tell. We're very careful about this because we want to make sure that people develop and express a sense of self, that they are not, in a way, stigmatized or labeled as having been um, a full summing experience of their life occurring because of something that happened to them. So our sense of resilience is very transformative and it's personal. And it's something we believe we have a small part of. We don't
Mm.
have a sense, we have some humility that we're part of an overall person's growth through something that has been very difficult. And that we believe the art component is really significant because it allows a person to tolerate a certain amount of safe discomfort.
Mm-hmm.
Doing art, taking a plan, doing something that's maybe not your favorite,
Mm-hmm.
um, or something that's new, or doing it in a new time or space is a little uncomfortable. And it's titrated. It's not too much. We're not plunging people into the deep end of the pool. We're helping them work their way through so they experience something, which is I can do a hard thing. I can trust myself. I can make relationships. Now, the very simple answer, what is resilience? It's coping,
Mm-hmm.
it's building meaning, and there's really nothing better than art to really think about connecting, storytelling, and building meaning. And one of the pioneers literally wrote the textbook on trauma informed expressive arts that's more clinical facing. Kathy Macchioli likes to say that the arts are the original psychotherapy,
Mm.
which is great for free arts because only a couple of us have any clinical training. What we do is take therapeutic goods, experiences, and make them available to trained adults and to those who participate in our programs below the level of diagnosis, below the level of treatment. We're alongside it. Many of
Right.
those that we're working with are experiencing that kind of treatment, and that is great, and we support it. We also support that being in a safe place with other people, building something important, and experiencing this internal sense of what does my life mean, even if that's a poem, even if that's an expression. And it doesn't even have to be directly related to the circumstances that introduce them to free arts. It's just got to be important to them.
And I don't mean to get too much into the weeds here, but I am really curious about this because one of the things that you mentioned is efficacy. And one of the things that I love about the arts is that there really isn't a right or wrong, right? Or there shouldn't be, rather. I mean, I think that we've seen instances where teachers might have said, no, you're doing that wrong. But you've mentioned before, too, that it's important that the participants accomplish, maybe form a plan, is what you said, form a plan before, and execute on it. So, how do you walk that fine line between making sure that the young person, the young participant, is never wrong in how they want to express their feelings, but yet they're still creating that plan and executing and making something so that they do have that accomplishment at the end of the process?
Yeah, I'm going to share with you a couple important catchphrases around free arts, right?
Okay.
So, when we train and work with adults, we are introducing them, and this takes work because even adults who have gone through screening have maybe heard this, gone to the website, heard it from a friend, are super jazzed to come in here, but they don't realize they've been conditioned in a certain way.
Mm.
And we've had people who come in and who are like, well, at what point do we punish somebody for not trying hard enough at art? And I'm like, we're not.
Yeah.
We're not doing that, right? This is not the venue. So the buzz phrases I want to give you is we are all about voice and choice. So we might have an art theme for the day, and some of our more intensive experiences, like theater camp, where about 30-ish teenagers arrive on a Monday, but they've already been screened and told this camp is about developing a show that you will perform at the Herberger Theater West stage in 12 days. Are you interested in that? If the answer is yes, come on in. If the answer is no, I'd rather just paint in a small group. Like there's a different activity for you, right?
Right.
So that choice, meaning I am willing going after something that might be really scary. And trust me, we have a reliable schedule of what people will feel like throughout those 12 days of developing this, including about 2 days prior where everybody is so full of stage fright, we should cancel it. And we never do, and everybody does great, right? So choice. And that means even in a practical setting, I'm not quite feeling the drawing activity. Okay, we brought this. You want to work on this? Do you want to do a poem? Do you want to do spoken word? We work with some of what you're bringing with us to the level you want to bring. And if that means I'm not having it, I don't trust it, I just got here, and that happens, right?
Yeah.
They got in the van took them to the location. They haven't really had a lot of choice on where they're going. And you want to sit with your arms crossed in the room, we'll let you do that until you feel like that's something you'd like to try. And that happens way more often that somebody kind of breaks down, all right, let me try this.
Yeah.
But we're going to wait. We're not going to pressure. So we give that sense of choice. And then the other word around it is voice, which is, as long as we're not being offensive or threatening the safety of others, we welcome the expression that this person is having. We have to have like general polite avoiding vulgarity and profanity in the art, but that might be your private project you take with you. It might not be something that we show that night, but this is what's important to you, and that's respecting where that person is at the moment. So even if they have a reason or a need to grow past just that experience, it's not our job to tell them it has to be by this time and it has to be tonight. So voice and choice are ways that we do that. And then there's a very powerful mantra that if you take a tour of us, you're going to hear it, you're going to see it. But we believe that there are no mistakes in art. And so as part of what I said in the beginning, telling you all that I'm not a professional artist, that's on purpose because I participate and enjoy the arts as much as any of them. I just may never have an exhibit or a gallery or something that you're going to come and see. But that doesn't mean that the things that I produce are not just as transformative as meaningful. And one of the other really powerful truisms about why do art around us as a good for well-being is that all good art activities are opportunities for self-compassion, because as soon as we engage in a creative process, some dialogue gets kicked off, and the chances are this dialogue in our mind, full of our conditioning, our self-doubt, our limitations, is probably the same replaying tape of audio that is happening in other parts of our life. And so one of the kind of transformative things that we can work through is if I can sit and see and hear these challenging, you're not good enough, nobody's going to like your art. And trust me, this occurs across the spectrum. So I'm telling you, I'm not a professional artist. I come into this art activity and I'm over here trying to get a basic sketch together. And my colleague over here's got the Mona Lisa that they've just kind of done with a pencil, And so you can instantly be plunged into comparing and feel, I'm bad, they're better, I'll never measure up. Ooh, we can work with that. How many times do we do that in any other of the important ventures of our life, whether it be school or work or in our relationships? Our minds are built in a certain way to keep us safe, to be goal directed. And so comparing ourselves to others is one data point, but for most people, it's the only data point, and that can be quite challenging. So no mistakes in art is a way to develop that sense that we are committed to whatever you produce has value because you invested in it, regardless of whether or not you show it to another person. And so that art is a place of transformation. It is a view of self, and it is a view that gets communicated one way or another, and we allow people to decide what they do with that art. We don't collect them, we don't
Okay.
sell them. These are things that belong to the participants. Occasionally we do ask for a particular project to leave us an artifact that we can show, and we rotate those. But that again is done by, are you choosing this? Are you interested in this? And when you think about how many places young people in general have the ability to choose and to have their voice heard just as it is,
Right.
it's very small. And then you add in these stressors like being and living in a group home or in a shelter environment. How
Right.
much choice and voice do they have? So it's quite liberating for people to even feel that that's possible, such that they'll be disoriented. Like I don't have to do the clay. I can do the paint. Are you sure? Yeah. Just engage, bring what's here. And we are very careful too to train our adults to know the difference between encouragement and praise, because praise is often product oriented. And so there is a product at times in our life. We got to turn in the thing by the deadline. But we're also hoping that the art process, the creative process, is also just something to encourage.
Mhm.
Thank you for the effort. Thank you for the bravery. Thank you for the exploration. Thank you for the use of color. It has nothing to do with whether or not we're going to frame that and put that on a wall somewhere.
Matt, do you think that there is an element that this thing that they created, it belongs to them even if it doesn't exist in their possession? Do you know
Oh,
what I mean?
yes.
I'm asking because we know so much about kids who, especially in kids who are in group homes and foster homes, they have so few possessions. That stupid plastic bag that follows them around from placement to placement too often, right? Unless they happen to be in a great place that provides a backpack or something like that. And those possessions dwindle, they disappear, they get lost. And we hear so often from kids coming out of the system about how little they have.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just have to wonder if, even if they don't retain possession of the thing that they made, do they still feel like it belongs to them, that they made, that there's a permanence, even if it's not tangible?
Yes. And I also have met enough participants to know not only do they believe that the objects themselves belong, but I know this is audio format, but over my shoulder is a painting done by someone who was a participant who, when we asked, could we use this for promotional material?
Mm.
And it's a picture of a crane making a building hope out of blocks. Building Hope became a project here where we bought our building. So that was the theme. But when we asked them, they said, yes, you could use it as long as I can come in and make another one. So this person came in, I don't know, 7, 8 years later as a young adult and repainted the same thing, and two exist.
Oh,
One
wow.
person, two different paintings at different slices of time. So this is where we get woo-woo and mystical and the power of art. But this is what if you've clicked this far and listened, you're into what we're talking about.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And that
absolutely.
way, that art is always belonging and also not belonging, right? It is what they have made and released into the world. And all artists have this sense of like, is it done? Is it finished? And that's the battle they all have. And yet we have this instructive moment from this young person who has enough self-reflection to say, I made that, you could use it, but I'm also in a different place now, and let me make it again and again. And this touches on a real theme that art can teach us, is we are with us. We are our own resource, right?
Yeah.
We are a resource to ourselves and the
Right.
combined experiences. So yes, I would love people to have their art, but more than anything, I would love for them to take away an experience at Free Arts where they experienced some form of heartbreak. They transformed parts of that understanding through art in a very personal process so that the heartbreaks of their life don't get the last word. So heartbreak that is transformed. So heartbreak doesn't lead, is not the headline, but that as we grow and mature, and many of the people listening to this have had their own hardships, their own adversities and traumas, very much the same, sometimes in the system, and sometimes they endured it without ever being in the child welfare system. They know that there is this process of growing progressively outside of it. In a way, art tracks that. The art belongs to you, but it never has, in a way. It is also belonging to the process of change, the process of transforming. into this person that you are now, which is a sum of all these other experiences you've had along the way. And I think that that portrait story is a powerful way of illustrating that.
Well, it's, I can't help but think about, the Maya Angelou poem, I Know Why a Caged Bird Sings. And of course, the other piece of that too is, your idea of voice and choice. We know that to somebody who's experienced trauma, it feels like both of those things have been robbed of them in those moments, and every time they re-experience it, right? So I can see it. I can see it in absolutely in what you're saying. But I'm going to ask, because here on Talking About Kids, we do like evidence. Because, and I have to say, Matt, part of the problem is, and if it hasn't already come across that I'm a fan of free arts, the organization and your work, I am. But there's a lot of people that masquerade as kind of arts therapy, or there's a lot of things that kind of exist sort of in this space, but not really. And I want my listeners to be able to tell the difference between an intervention that has the theory, that has the science, and that pays attention to evidence in its creation. So, how do you know if what you're doing with free arts works?
Great question. And it's one that those that worked in the organization before I joined it were wrestling with, because anecdotally, there's enough evidence everywhere that this is meaningful. It's enough. What's exciting about this at an administrative and even at a fundraising level is if you go talk about arts to a certain group, you'll get them all excited.
Right.
If you go talk about children experiencing a challenging environment, you'll get them excited. Well, guess what? I get to tell you about both things. And you're like 10 times more excited because you realize, look at this group of children who really needs support. And this art passion that I carry, and I get to support both at the same time. And I'm not saying this to be a commercial here, although it's coming off that way. What I'm trying to tell you is, and those listening, is that there is an anecdotal piece that people assume. And what we've done over a long period of time is be very honest about what our model is and refer back to that model where we build safety psychologically and physically in the space. That is number one, just like Maslow's pyramid, right? Safety, right? Self-expression follows from that we are giving voice and choice. We're allowing this to happen because the skills that translate later are these communication skills, right? So there's that leads to skill building, which for us as a model isn't just artistic skills, but relational skills, including working with peers, and also, can I work with this adult who's wearing a blue shirt, which is the mentor shirt. Once you go through the training, you get the shirt. And we mean that on purpose so that if you're in a program or in a space and you see a blue free art shirt, you can make a safe assumption that this is a safe person. Right? I'm associating this visual look to somebody who understands the model that I'm telling you a bit about. So that skill building then leads to self-efficacy. I can do hard things, and we call that resilience, even though that's not really like a mountaintop. It's more like something you're flowing in and out of. We all know that. We have less resilience on Monday morning, and somehow we have a lot more on Friday afternoon, right? We're up and down throughout the week. So all of that to say, that was the idea around our model in a very quick succession. But over the last several years, we've been collecting very rigorous evaluations with psychometric tools turned into questions that teenagers and children above the age of 9 answer. And I have to be honest, it's not the most exciting survey to take. It is important. And there is a certain amount of voice and choice. You're allowed to do this. You're also allowed not to do this. Right. Let me tell you what it helps us with. And we have enough data now to tell you how powerful it is, how effective it is. And so we're talking about at basic levels, 88 to 92% people who experience these programming talk about achieving some meaningful element of safety, of skill building, of self-expression, turned into different questions. We don't ask that as the question, did you express yourself?
Right.
But we are looking underneath it at the domains that make that. So did I use art to regulate? Did I make a connection with a caring adult or a peer, right? These are all supportive, safe things. Do I believe I'm physically safe in my environment? So the safety scores through the roof. That is both physical and emotional. We're proud of that because that's where things start, because it's obviously the thing that has been challenged in their experience. So the good news of that is we have enough data now after a few years that we've actually been taking this to national places to present, to say, yes, we sold you at art, or yes, we sold you at kids. And for a small group of you, putting them together, you were done. Here's my support. Show me when to sign up. But there's another group out there that funds things and thinks that the arts are a silly place to put investment.
Yeah.
And we're here to tell you that it is an integral part of human development. It is the first psychotherapy, right? It is the first way that we tell stories. And anyone who has, this capacity around advocacy to see that funding these type of initiatives has meaning is still a person that experiences creativity and art in their own way. They just haven't connected them. So we realize that for many of us, just telling you is enough. And there's some others, God bless them, that have this need for data and science, and it's there, right? So evidence-based practice is 100% what we're behind. And when we're talking about that evidence-based, what we're seeing here is that we are building the skills of mindfulness, our ability to be present, our ability to focus on process, not the product. We also know that those who experience adversities and traumas store these feelings neurologically in spaces that do not involve words. So if we want to engage in safe spaces, safe recall, safe reabsorption of that experience, it's going to take place outside of language, movement, dance, music. The combination of them does something very unique to the human brain that allows that sense of healing. And we're honest about it. We talk about healing here because healing is all about a return to well-being. And all of us are seeking that at any point in our lives.
Well, Matt, I'm just so excited for the work that you're doing at Free Arts. I think it's incredible. I'm a believer, obviously, not just for what you do, but I've read the literature, not just on your program, but on other arts initiatives that have been properly implemented. So thank you so much for everything that you're doing for kids, especially this population. It's a population that is overlooked, and it's one that all of us that care about kids should be worrying about constantly. So thank you for everything that you do, and thank you for being a guest on Talking About Kids.
This has been great, Brad. It's been awesome to be here. Thanks for your support. And you're right. These are noble causes. And what's compelling, I think, about it for everyone who's listening to you, it's something we can all take away from and allow to be part of our work and our approach with anyone that we're working with. And thank you again for the chance to be here today.
That was Matt Sandoval. More information about Matt and Free Arts is at talkingaboutkids.com. And when you do visit the Talking About Kids website, leave me a note. I would love to hear from you. The Talking About Kids theme song is by the Senators. For more of their music, go to thesenatorsmusic.com. And remember, kids are young goats and young humans, and the difference is that young goats are easier to manage.